Today is a special day because it's Rosh Chodesh. It's a special day because we are going to be starting officially Siman Reish Mem Beis, which is the first Siman of all of Hilchos Shabbos. And it's also special because we only have 20 minutes as opposed to our usual 40 minutes because of the honor of Rosh Chodesh. So therefore, I want to recycle something, a shir that I gave around 4 or 5 years ago on Parshas Vayakal, which is not recorded as well. Something that was discussed over there because of what Aleinu L'Shabeach brought up, Rav Zilberstein in the Sefer Aleinu L'Shabeach. And it happens to be that it's quoted in the footnotes of the Svarim on this Siman as well. A very applicable question, which is something that everyone has been asking for already months and months and months. Is it permissible to use disposable plastic dishes for Shabbos, cups, cutlery, the silverware that's plastic, the fancy plastic? What's the story? Here's what's going to happen over here. To my knowledge, there's only really three primary sources that talk about this, and two are much shorter than the third. We're going to do the third first, which is longer, and is going to present the information in a very digestible manner and easy for us to understand. And this is very enjoyable to me. I did not type this in English yet. I can't wait to type this up, add this to my notes, get it officially in there. And this is a beautiful segue going into Reish Mem Beis. And the other reason why it's so beautiful to learn this now is because of all of our knowledge from Siman Reish Samach Beis, and Reish Nun. We're going to see how it's beautifully tied in together. That being said, without further ado, we will begin the tshuva. This is actually, I'm a big fan of this sefer, the Mishnas Yosef, the Shilos and Chuvas Mishnas Yosef. This is in Chelik, hey, excuse me, Siman Samach Dala. This is Rabbi Yosef Lieberman, and you could Google his name, his farm. We've learned a few pieces over the years together. Excellent, excellent pieces over here that he discusses. So without further ado, he says like this. We know that the Shulchan Aruch having a set table is one of the ways to honor Shabbos. Like the Gemara in Masechah Shabbos says on Kuf Yud Tesima Beis, that there are two angels that escort a person home on Shabbos, and when they come to the house and they find that the candle is lit and the table is set, the Shulchan Aruch, and the table is set, keywords, and everything is all neat and everything. So then the good angel says, Yehi Ratzon, it should be the will of Hashem that this is what it will look like next week. And then the bad angel has to answer unwillingly, Amen. And if the opposite is true, everything is a mess, etc. So then the bad Malach says, Yehi Ratzon, it should be the will of this will happen next week. And the good Malach has to answer, Amen. Good, that's all we knew. We already knew that. But what do we see from this Gemara in Shabbos? We see that there's that the setting of the table and the lighting of the Ner Shabbos of the candle are equated one another. Similarly, we hold in the halachas of Ner Shabbos and Siman Reish Samach Gimel Sif Aleph that a person should be careful to have a very good candle, a good Ner. Similarly, the table also should be set nicely, as we learned about in depth already. This is not new to us. This is all review essentially. So we see from this that what? That included in a set table is having very nice silverware, very nice plates, etc. That is considered beautifying Zekili Venveyu and setting the table nice. Similarly, the Gemara in Masechah Shabbos, which we already learned this Gemara inside together as well, the wealthy people in other lands, with what do they merit? It's because, how do they merit their wealth? The answer is, according to the Gemara over here, that what? That because they honor Shabbos. And then there's a Gemara relates a story that talks about that one of the rabbis, Rabbi Chanina bar Abba, he was one time a guest by a certain wealthy individual in Ludkia, and they brought Shulchan Shel Zahav, a golden table that had the weight. It took 16 people to lift it, and it had 16 chains of silver that was connected to it, and it had very nice bowls and cups and pitchers of sorts, etc., that were on it, and it had all types of food. So we see that having very nice dishes and accessories and the like are considered honoring Shabbos. And what? And they merit in this because that they said that what? That when they found a nice animal, they said that this is going to be for Shabbos. So we see that what? Not everyone could do this, have such a very fancy table like that, but we see the concept of having very nice dishes over here. The Shulchan Aruch in Siman Reish Samach Beis, which we already learned, said that a person should strive to have very nice clothing on Shabbos, like he's going to greet a king. Now the Shulchan Aruch doesn't mention over there to have very nice dishes, like the Gemara in Sukkah Kaf Ches mentions when it comes specifically to lachas of Sukkah. Simin Tuf Reish Lamed Tes is brought down over there to bring into your Sukkah very nice dishes, cutlery, silverware, etc. And also on the night of Pesach as well, we find the Shulchan Aruch in Simin Tuf Ayin Beis of Beis says that you should set your table very nicely with all sorts of dishes and cutlery according to one's financial ability. However, it's obvious that this would also apply on Shabbos as well, and it doesn't even need to be emphasized. Because what would be the reason and the purpose for having very nice clothing and to have a very nice table in your house to be clean with very cheap and flimsy plastic types of forks and plates, etc.? The paper plates are a joke. You put a half a liquid on the thing and breaks the whole plate. It's ridiculous. So therefore, that it has to be set and has to be befitting for a king. That is the idea over here. Specifically on the night of Pesach, this is brought in the Shulchan Aruch and mentioned to exclude from the rest of the year that one shouldn't have very fancy dishes on his table. Why Zeichel L'Churban? To remember that we unfortunately, due to our great iniquities, do not have a Beis HaMikdash anymore. So therefore, we don't have the fanciest of the fancy. However, But on a regular Pesach night, for sure we would. However, on Shabbos and Yontif, you definitely would have fancy kalim. It's not coming to exclude that specifically on Pesach night, but not Shabbos and Yontif. No, for sure, Shabbos and Yontif, you would have nice dishes as well. Similarly, furthermore, the Shulchan Aruch writes in Siman Reish Samach Beis that a person should have their beds already made and everything like that. The chairs that they sit on should be nice. So this is already talking about that in their day and age. We already learned that they used to sit on something like a bed. They make the bed, aka their couches. But the idea is to have that something nice. So we see that that not only the house and the table, but even the chairs as well, the couches that you're going to sleep on, the beds, etc. It has to be all for Shabbos. So if that's so then certainly Kal V'Chomer or Kol Shulchan that this would apply with with food items such as the silverware, cutlery, and the nice plates that they enhance and beautify the table itself. The Shulchan Aruch in Siman Reish Nun also says that one should strive himself to personally be involved with the preparations of Shabbos, like Rav Nachman that was Mesak in Abayis. He fixed the house in Kiline, Machnes Kelim Asrichim Shabbos Afana Kliachol, and he brought in the vessels that were needed for Shabbos, aka plates, cutlery, and he would remove the weekday types of vessels and utensils that were being used. And so therefore, we see that there's something special about that was used for Shabbos over there. Okay, so that's what we see from who is that? Reb Nachman himself, right? Yeah, Reb Nachman, the Amor in the Gemara, and the Ran says this as well, that he was prepared to greet Shabbos and he was showing an honor over there. All right, so this is the idea. That's what we see so far. Now, this is the situation over here that if a very important guest would come to our house, so then certainly we would set the table ever so carefully in front of them and beautify it to the greatest ability that we could if an important guest came to our house. Now, we would use the fanciest vessels that we have, the fanciest silverware, the fanciest plates, and perhaps we would even borrow from our neighbor to get the fanciest plates as well. So this certainly applies to Shabbos, the guest of all guests, so to say. So this is the idea over here. Now, when it comes to Rav Nachman, the Gemara says another statement, which we already learned in the past, that he was makatif v'ayil machnis kliya Shabbos makatif v'nofik kliyachol. That he literally shouldered and went in. He brought in all of the Shabbos vessels. That's what that means, makatif v'nofik, and he brought out all of the weekday vessels, silver, cutlery, etc. That's the idea over here, because he said that, if Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi will come, Miloi Machtafina Kamayu, would we not do this? For sure we would do this. So just like we would do it for those rabbis, so too we certainly have to do it for Shabbos as well. So yes, Einachanami, true, someone who would in fact set the table so now he's coming into practically. So if a person would make a simcha, would make a big simcha, and that he would have at the simcha, these chad pa'amim, he would have these one-time used vessels over here, that if at the simcha, he would have these types of dishes over here, these plates and all the cutlery and silverware that are only going to be used for one time. So then, yes, Shabbos, he could also do that. But a person has to know, what are they going to be having at their simcha? Now, it could be, and it's very logical that this type of person as well, that no, you don't go after what he does in his personal meals, but rather if an important guest would come. However, there's something very important, and this is where it starts getting really applicable. There's something that's very important that has to be mentioned over here. That the question is who's going to be setting the table and who's going to be cleaning it up and washing the dishes. Many times there are big families, and a lot of times when there are big families, this could be a bittul, this could be considered a nullification, a slashing of the oneg, the coveted oneg Shabbos, the pleasure for Shabbos, because if there aren't enough a lot of times big families, there's not enough dishes in their set that they have. Most sets probably come with, let's say, 10 dishes. So you have your big family, you're not going to be able to now split up those dishes for Shabbos day and night. So therefore, you're going to have to wash them again at night. Now, if you're going to need to wash them again at night, that could be very difficult sometimes. He says an example, if you have a family of 15 people and all of them need around, let's say, 4 dishes, if we're talking about, let's say, for example, it depends on how many plates you're going, appetizer, soup, main, dessert plate, and then you got all the silverware plus the cup. I mean, you're talking over 100 dishes. He does some math over here, but this is the idea over here. So now when you wash dishes on Shabbos, you got to be careful about certain halachas. First of all, it's a burden for the wife many times, and it's annoying and painful, so to say, and she doesn't want to do it. Many other times, there's a potential isur darais of schita, of squeezing borer, separating, using hot water from the sink. I mean, there's all sorts of shilas that come up over here. So this is now you can't compare that to a simcha. You make a wedding, you make a bar mitzvah, etc. Over there, you got waiters. Over there, you got people who are cleaning up, who are working in the kitchen. They're running the show with the dishes. You don't need to worry about that. Conversely, over here. So therefore, he says like this, that it's possible to be lenient on a big family in this specific scenario in which no one else can help. For sure, if you already have cleaning help, there's nothing to talk about. You got cleaning help. But if no one else is around, it's very difficult, a big family, then you could use on Shabbos night, you could use Shabbos night, keyword, and we'll see why in a moment, that you could use just the disposable dishes. And you don't need to wash them. However, during the Suda, the daytime meal, Shabbos morning, which is the main meal, as we learned in Hilchos Kiddush and Reish Ayin Aleph Siv Gimel, it's supposed to be halachically the most lavish. That's when one certainly should take the fancy dishes. So these people who the whole time they just want to take it easy, no. Especially nowadays, may I add in the missing words, with the dishwashers. The dishwashers after Shabbos make it so easy, mamish walk in the park. And therefore, you should take the fancy ones and you should wash them after Shabbos as well. And then he says if it's difficult for the wife to do, that's when you got to be the man and step up to the plate and wash those dishes and help out. That's what it comes to over there. And you have to realize it's worth it. Every ounce of energy that goes on to beautify Shabbos, that's exactly what we're learning about. We got to practice what we preach and what we learn about. And that's the idea over here. And therefore, the husband, mitzvah al baila lazor. It's a mitzvah for the husband to help out. Like Rav Nachman, who himself helped out, and also on Motzei Shabbos as well. Put away the dishes when they're clean out of the dishwasher as well. Put those dishes away. When it comes to the disposable one-time usages on Shabbos night, also when if a person would be in this situation, he should buy the fancier ones, the colored. They make all different shapes, sizes, and talk to the women. They know all about this and amazing savings. Shout out, amazing savings. And what? So they get all the disposable there? No, I'm not getting paid by Amazing Savings. And therefore, this is also included the fancy disposable dishes that you use of the Gemara and Beitza and Tezayin, Kolmas and Oisif, Kitsuvin Lo, that all of a person's parnasa, however much income he will make that year, is already predetermined on Rosh Chodesh, on Rosh Hashanah. We'll learn more about this as we actually learn the Siman inside, except for what? Basically anything that has to do with the mitzvah, and the Gemara specifically specifies Shabbos. A.k.a. the more a person spends for the disposable, it's not in the calculation of the expenditures. Now, this is only talking about the actual halacha, that it's obvious that these one-time vessels and dishes and cutlery, that it's part of an obligation of honoring Shabbos, and we said that we could be lenient in the previously mentioned scenarios. However, it's a hiddur mitzvah, the way of beautifying a mitzvah, for sure, certainly to use very nice dishes. 100%, the fancy dishes, and therefore to have a nice cup for a nice kos for kiddush, Ravdallah, as we learned already in the past. The silver, also a nice menorahs. It's in Hilchos Chanukah, Siman Tafrei Shayin Gimel, and also even with an esrog box. even though it's not the mitzvah itself, it's only something that's holding a mitzvah. So certainly this would apply for the meal on Shabbos, right? Especially the knife that you're going to use to cut the lechem mishnah with, to cut the bread with. There's a hiddur that it should be very nice knife. It should be very nice. It's preferable. And therefore, that's more important than the estrog box and the holder, because you're not even filling a mitzvah with that. Because when you take out the estrog, you take out the estrog using the estrog. However, when it comes to this, you're actually using it for the bread itself, and it could even be a full-fledged obligation. And this is the idea over here. However, he says that the Chassam Sofer in the Shalos Teshuvas Orach Chaim Siman Kuf Pei Aleph says that even though that what okay, no, he's going into something else over there. Okay, so then this is the idea. So if a lot of people use these disposable dishes because of the previously mentioned reasons, the one-time disposable dishes, and also coupled with the fact that a lot of times the little children could break dishes if you're going to use fancy ones, china, etc. And so therefore, that's fine, especially for the children. That what for the children, you don't need to put the fancy china in front of them for sure. They're just going to crack that thing. They'll think it's a game. They don't know what's going on over there. So therefore, they don't understand the situation. So therefore, no problem if you give those children those, and that's the idea. However, the preferable halacha in this scenario would be is that for the day suda, for the meal during the day, to use the fancy dishes 100%. And if you have to use a disposable, then use it at night, and it should still be nicer disposable dishes. Mahadran min mahadran, the best is that the adults should always be using the fancy dishes and silverware cutlery. However, the children, you could give them the fancy disposable, and this is the idea over here. So this is the mission of Yosef. We clearly see where he's headed, and he's basically simplifying matters, which is preferably for sure you should do it. If you can't, pressing situation, very difficult to wash anything, really you should for the adults, all sudas, that's preferable. If you can't even do that, then certainly during the day suda, the children obviously don't need to get the fancy dishes if they're just going to break it. If they're going to break it. My children actually don't break it, Baruch Hashem. And yeah, that's what they say, the girls. Now, Shiles and Chuvas Evan Yisrael comes along, Rabbi Yisrael Fisher, and he has a small tshuva on this. He seems to take a more lenient approach from what I remember when I saw this last. And he basically says over here that someone who has the ability to wash all the dishes on Shabbos night, so for sure that will be halachically preferable to do. However, nowadays he says the women a lot of times are weaker and they need to take care of the children, as we know, require a tremendous amount of energy, and they don't have strength after a full day to now be involved with this, and then to continue to, after they prepared for Shabbos and now they're going to wash all the dishes for the next day, they just pass out of exhaustion sometimes, and therefore you could use these dishes because there's no burden and you don't need to wash them. And also you said that you would never use such dishes at a wedding. Yes, but a bar mitzvah you might, a tanoim you might use it, and for Chassidim we have tanoim, and therefore regarding kavod Shabbos, if you're gonna, okay, so that's basically what he says over here. That's basically his psak over here, and the difference between that logic of would you use this at a simcha or not, it could depend on the simcha and the fanciness, and he basically gives a more lenient approach. One last source, which should certainly be sprinkled in over here, I'm not allowed to screen share because of copyright laws, but this is what we started with, the Lein L'Shabeach in Parshas Vayakel. You could look it up on page Tuf Kuf Lamed. He says that he received a letter from a couple who had a lot of children, and this was regarding the situation over here of the food on Shabbos. And he says like this: he says that the husband came along and said that no, it's very difficult for his wife to wash all of the dishes, and therefore that he wanted to use disposable. However, right, so that would just be easier, and you could also take off the whole tablecloth, everything plastic, one shot, very, very easy and quick. Put it right in the garbage to make it easier for his wife. However, the wife said that no, that yes, it would be easier to clean up for Shabbos. However, that maybe the owning Shabbos would be better. But what about the kavod Shabbos? In other words, is that really honoring Shabbos? She said, is that really what I'm supposed to be doing? Is that really what Hashem wants of us? And is it really honor of Shabbos to use such a thing? And if a nice guest came, wouldn't we bring out the nicest dishes that are sparkling? And so he said before he answered this question, Rav Zilberstein said he needed to ask another question that caught his attention regarding another situation where he just wanted to point out how you see from this question that everyone just cared about the other person, that they were each just caring about themselves. The woman was caring about Shabbos, and the husband was caring about the wife, which we see from over there, which is a very special thing. So he said, asked his brother-in-law, Rav Chaim Kanievsky, what he thought about this shiloh over here, and he said that there was another story, similar story with the Chazon Ish about someone, a Lithuanian Jew, who honored Shabbos with a tie. And he said that when a certain Bacher went to the yeshiva, and he said it's very difficult, especially in the summer. It's so hot in Abrak, it's like a desert, and he sweats like crazy, and there's literally sweat droplets coming down. And he said, "Do I really need to wear the tie, or maybe it's considered, or can I walk without the tie, or maybe if I don't wear the tie, it will be considered me belittling Shabbos?" So he said that Reb Chaim Kanevsky said the Chazon Ish said if there's no oneg, then there's no kavod. In other words, if it's not a pleasure for you, then it's not honor for Shabbos. Which means if you're really not getting pleasure from it at all, so then it's not kavod Shabbos. I think that's questionable psak. But anyways, that's the idea over there. And according to that, it's the same over here as well. Since it's very difficult to wash all the dishes, so therefore it's not considered that you are belittling the honor of Shabbos. However, Rav Zilberstein says about that, he says his heart wasn't complete about the comparison between the two completely, because at the end of the day, that if an important guest would come, you certainly wouldn't care about any difficulty, and you would use very fancy dishes. And he said he told the couple that nowadays, since we have nice disposable dishes in all sorts of styles, and if you're going to use that, so then you should take those and not the simple disposable dishes. And he also said Reb Chaim Kanievsky agreed. However, from the letter of the lawmaker Adin, Reb Chaim Kanievsky said that there's no pagam, there's no blemish with using disposable dishes, and it's not considered belittling the honor of Shabbos, even though they are very, very cheap. And then he said that he added that that everyone cares about the other one was an impressive situation over here. So basically, in the 30-second summary, we see from over here the importance. This is what we learned today, the importance of using very fancy dishes and cutlery, and really it should be done. If it cannot be done, so then the next level is that you should try to do it for at least the adults. At least the adults. If you can't do it for the adults, you can't do it for the adults all the time. At least do it Shabbos day for the adults. And if the kids are gonna ruin the fancy dishes, you don't need to use it for the kids. That's basically the story in a nutshell. And also, if the wife needs help with the washing of the dishes and everything, it's worth it to have those dishes. That's the presentation of this information. Any questions, comments on this? Straightforward. I mean.
You can't figure this out 100%.
All right.
Figure it out.
Yes.
All right, that's that Shiloh. We're not going to be hearing that Shiloh no more because that Shiloh was addressed. Gonna have to find another one. All right, Mitzvah Hashem. Next time we will resume with the tour, beginning with the tour. All right. Everyone should have a wonderful day. Remember, have a lavish shoot in honor of Rosh Chodesh and wash.
No, tomorrow. And today too, but today,
yeah,
more
tomorrow's
so
the main day, right? First day of Rosh Chodesh. Good point.